Alright. So we're taking a look at the Restoration Shaman. This thing is doing really damn well in its current iteration. In most situations, the only place where it really kind of lacks behind is its single target heals, because they're just a little on the weak sauce side. But you can spec a little differently to help that out. Now, what we're going to start off with is a few of the passives just to let you know what's going on with this. And the first passive that we're going to cover is Tidal Waves. Casting Chain Heal or Riptide reduces the cast time of your next healing wave by 30% or increases the critical effect chance of your healing surge by 40%. Stacks up to 2 times. This used to end up applying whenever you cast Riptide or Chain Heal twice already. So it seemed like it was never really too much to worry about because you always seem to have it up. Now they've made it to where it's a manageable buff. You actually have to manage this thing a bit more and decide, okay, do I want the additional chance to crit or do I want the faster healing wave and be a bit more efficient? It does still stack up to 2 with some talent options and make it 3, but really the way that this thing's playing out, you've got to end up managing these things to stay in your efficient level and still get your best benefit of healing. It's no longer just passively going to be up there because you're constantly chain healing or hitting Riptide and getting an automatic 2 stacks. So with that, we'll go on to our next passive, and that's going to be Resurgence. This is going to be your main way of getting mana back now that there is no spirit on gear. Your direct heal criticals refund a percentage of your maximum mana, 1% from healing wave, 0.6% from healing surge or Riptide, and 0.25% from chain heal. Doesn't seem like a lot, but if chain heal ends up critting on every target, that's 0.25% for each target that it crit on. Very nice to end up seeing this. It's a good mana return and makes crit very, very valuable to the Restoration Shaman. Now finally, the last thing that I want to end up covering in the passives is your Mastery. Mastery has not changed at all, really. It increases your healing from spells by up to whatever your Mastery is at based on the current health of your target. Lower health targets are healed for more. Exactly the same as what it was, but this is something to take into preference on why your single target heals are a lot weaker than most. Because whenever you end up getting into a lower situation, all your healing's just getting a massive boost. Is it more efficient to cast Chain Heal because the group's grouped up and all taking damage? Or do you just need a good solid single target fast heal to pop the tank back up? That's where the decision's going to be made. Even Healing Surge is quite a bit cheaper than what Chain Heal is. So those are the passives that I wanted to talk about. That's about all I really want to say on those. But that gives a little bit more of an understanding on how this thing's going to play and why we're doing our talent selections. So now that we've covered the passives, what we're going to do is take a quick look at the talents. Tier 15, you've got Undulation, Unleash Life, and Torrent. Torrent currently is the best choice, as where Undulation takes a lot of different math choices, and mainly if you're just spamming the tank. What it's going to do is every third single target heal, whether it be Healing Surge or Healing Wave, is going to get a buff to it and do a little bit more single target healing. The next one you have Unleash Life. Unleash Life is very weak. It does end up still kind of working the same way as what it did before, but the long cooldown and the additional button does kind of clunk up the rotation of what you can get from the other two without the extra button. Torrent is the top in this tier, and the reason for that is it increases the initial heal of Riptide, and it works very damn well. And it fits the rotation a bit better than the other two, as where Undulation, you're basically spamming one target hoping that it stays alive, or timing it out just right. Unleash Life is just clunky to use and doesn't really give that much of a buff, but Torrent you're going to more than likely use quite a bit already, especially if you're running your tier sets or anything else. It's just a good, cheap increase heal. Level 30, you've got Gust of Wind, Graceful Spirit, and Windrush Totem. Now, Gust of Wind's great for getting out of tight situations real fast, more or less PvP situations. Then Graceful Spirit is very, very nice. Reduces the cooldown of Spirit Walker's Grace by 1 minute, and also makes it to where you end up getting an additional amount of speed on top of it while it's active, and your Ghost Wolf gets an increased amount of speed also. Windrush Totem is basically Stampeding Roar in a totem on a 2-minute cooldown, and it works very damn well for group movement. If you don't need the group movement, or you just need to end up healing while running for some reason, you'll probably jump back and forth between Graceful Spirit and Windrush Totem more than anything. At level 45, you have Lightning Surge Totem, Earth Grab Totem, and Voodoo Totem. Lightning Surge Totem seems to have the better use, but this is really going to be up to you what you want to end up using. But Lightning Surge Totem just seems to do a bit more with its cooldown, with the stun, instead of just Earthbind on all these targets or hexing all these targets. The Hex Totem also seems to be a bit broken. It'll end up ceasing a couple, but not all of them. And until they get that fixed, you may want to end up just sticking with one of the other two. Level 60, Crashing Waves, Ancestral Guidance, and Deluge. Deluge is going to be the top in most AoE situations as long as people are stacked, and basically this is going to increase your chain heals healing to targets that are affected by your Riptide or your Healing Rain. Ancestral Guidance is going to be in second place right behind that if people are spread out, and the reason for it is it's a very solid amount of additional healing if people are spread. Crashing Waves, all that's going to do is just give you a little bit of a buffer on your tidal waves and an additional stack that you can build. Most of the time, if you're using your tidal waves correctly anyways, you shouldn't ever need that third stack, but it does help you from overcapping if you do have to cast an additional chain heal or Riptide. Level 75, you have Ancestral Protection Totem, Earthen Shield Totem, and Ancestral Vigor. Now you have 2 totems and then 1 passive buff that just ends up doing stuff. In the current state, Ancestral Vigor does seem a bit better, as to where any one of your heals, if you're healing through a direct heal spell and not, healing stream or something like that to where it's passive, but an actual direct heal, you're looking at Ancestral Vigor being better because it's going to increase the stamina of the targets by 10%, allowing a much better cushion to basically the entire raid with additional health. Plays out very nice, especially in progression runs. Then you have Earthen Shield Totem. This is okay. If you've got a bunch of adds or a bunch of increased damage, this will end up working out alright to help pad the damage, especially since your single target heals don't do very well. Any damage taken off the top, especially in a progression area, on a tank or something, this is going to help out. And then Ancestral Protection Totem, basically you're setting this down in the thought that somebody's getting ready to die, and it's kind of like a free battle res. It's going to allow them to onk like a shaman without adding to the battle res timer. Level 90, Bottomless Depths, Cloudburst Totem, and Echo of Elements. Echo of Elements really goes a little on the unchanged side. And the reason for this is because anything that you end up casting that uses up tidal waves has a chance to reset Riptide's cooldown. Pretty solid. It's really good. But currently, if you have the Archimon Trinket and your Force set, you won't need this because Riptide usually travels fairly quickly on its own, as the Archimon Trinket really ends up helping spread Riptide around the whole entire room. So Riptide really ends up jumping back and forth a lot already, so Echo of Elements is a little on the wasted side unless you're looking at doing some additional damage while healing. Bottomless Depths is going to be really good for longer fights where people are working much lower on the health. And the reason for this is it's going to allow Resurgence to trigger on any target healed under 60% health. This is going to be pretty damn solid in a mana use situation. Then finally, the one for the tier is going to be Cloudburst Totem. This thing has had some major improvements. One, its mana cost is very, very low for the amount of healing it puts out. And two, they actually gave you direct control over this totem instead of it being a, okay, I've got to be 100% timed correctly on this. You can actually reactivate this and have it blow up with what healing it's collected already. Plays out very nice. It's kind of like a burst style HTT totem. Now we'll go on to level 100. Ascendance is a very solid on use cooldown to help with burst situations where you might need an additional cooldown for healing. Wellspring, a little on the odd side. If the room is a little more spread out and you need people a bit better, you can personally direct yourself in the area where people just took a lot of damage, use Wellspring, and it's an okay heal. It's not great, it's not bad. Now, if people are stacked up and you know that you can get away with it, High Tide is going to be the better of the three in the level 100 tier, just for the simple fact, over a long fight, this is going to do much better. Chain Heal is actually going to do a bunch more healing, as the fall-off's only 15% instead of 30% between each target, and it just does a lot of additional healing. Alright, so we're going to take a real quick look at the stat priority also. And what you're looking at is Intel, Spell Power, top dog all the way through and through. That's just an overall increase on all of your healing. Crit right after that, and the reason why I say crit, there's a lot of forums out there that say mastery over crit, but the reason why I say crit over, as one, it's the only way that you're getting mana returned to you now. It's through your resurgence. Mastery is affected by the target's health. If you're using crit, it's going to help you in the higher ends of the health also, instead of waiting until someone gets low and seeing that benefit. As aware, a crit heal is still a crit heal, and usually pretty solid, and a lot better than waiting till those really clutch situations that mastery helps provide a good boost. So you're looking at both crit and then mastery. Next we'll end up having haste, and the reason for that is a reduced cast time on some of your abilities, making it a bit more efficient to play, and it also reduces the time between ticks on Riptide, helps out a decent amount in versatility. Even though it is an overall increase, it still scales very poorly for the Shaman and doesn't really seem to match up. Although you do get that benefit of additional damage reduction also, it just doesn't fit. Mainly what you're looking for on your gear is if it's got crit or mastery, you're going to want it, and hopefully they've got them both. Now, just like with any healer, you don't have a general rotation of what you're going to be doing, but looking at what you're doing for the dynamics of the fight. Is there somebody that's constantly being hit, taking a lot of damage? Okay, that's who you're going to want to end up keeping your Riptide on for the most part. Do you have an additional Riptide and someone's not taking damage? Use it on them. That way the HOT itself can take control and actually give you a more efficient healing style. Healing Wave is also a great one. If there's very low damage, you can end up using it, especially under the effects of tidal waves. It makes it to where it's pretty quick and efficient and a very strong heal. If you crit with it, you also get more mana refunded with Healing Wave. You can actually end up watching in most situations, if you crit quite often, you can go from 50% up to 60% mana just casting that one ability. So you do want to pay attention to how you end up healing and where you end up healing. The main thing about the Shaman is being active. You gotta constantly be thinking ahead of the game of where you're going to be taking the next damage. Do you need to use Chain Heal, because it is a fairly expensive spell, not as expensive as some of the other classes and their AoE healing, but when you start using it and Healing Rain together for AoE purposes, it does get quite costly. The best part about the Restoration Shaman is the fact that it still has one of the strongest kits in game. You have Spirit Link Totem, which still works exactly the same, but you can actually place it where you want it. You have Healing Tide Totem, which still does very decent amounts of healing. It's not great by any means right now, but that's because it's tuned for your artifact, and you'll end up seeing that thing get buffed up really well once you start putting some more into your artifact later on during Legion. You still have Healing Stream Totem, which is more of a baseline heal now. They want you to kind of use this thing on cooldown in situations where it's needed, as it's got a very low mana cost and does a decent amount of healing. Again, this is another totem that will be buffed through your artifact weapon later on in Legion. And then you've got Spirit Walker's Grace. Probably one of the best healing cooldowns in game, being the fact that you can end up healing while moving is pretty overpowered in almost every situation. This is a very solid cooldown for high mobility. This is going to allow you to keep the rest of the group alive in certain situations where most healers will be able to only use their instant cast spells and not be able to do as much work. The Shaman's kit basically gives it an overall advantage in just about every situation. Heavy cooldown usage, heavy AoE healing as long as the group is stacked. It doesn't do as great in the spread out situation for the simple fact your single target heals are the only part that really drag behind on the Restoration Shaman. But when you put the rest of it all together, you really can't beat it, and it does have the highest mana regen out of every other class that's healing alongside it. So you will see yourself on longer fights doing much better than other specs. With this, guys, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and as always, thanks for watching.